Nice to see you all. Can I remind you that this meeting is being recorded? And also, please can you keep your videos and your microphones turned off unless you're actually speaking. And if you'd like to speak, then put your hand up. Right, the first agenda item then is the apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Guy Grandison, and I'm very grateful to Graham Howe, who's substituting for him. Neil, are there any other apologies?
No, I think we're all here apart from that.
Yeah, we are all here. Thank you. Second item, to confirm the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. I've had an email from a very kind resident who pointed out that the minutes on the website were cut off at the edges and made them rather difficult to read. So I wonder, Neil, could we repost the minutes from the February meeting? And for all other minutes, could somebody check that they are clearly there and that they can all be read? I don't know quite how that happened or whether it was just a one-off, but
yes, we can do that, Chairman.
That would be super. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? No. In which case we move to public question time. Are there any public questions?
None received, Chairman.
I didn't take an agreement that the minutes were a correct record. Is there anybody that doesn't believe that they are? Okay. Member questions?
None received, Chairman.
Lovely. Right then, let's move to the main item tonight, which is the overview and scrutiny work programmes for the next year. There are really three sections to this, and I'll take each one of them in turn. There's the requests for scrutiny, for the new requests for scrutiny for the next municipal year. There's the potential scrutiny items, including items arising from the council's delivery plan. I'll take that second, that's in Annex B. And then there are items to be carried forward from the current work programme. So we'll do them last, that's Annex C. But before we begin the discussion, there's just a few things to take into account when we're deciding whether to take these issues on board or not. What we take forward has to reflect local needs and local concerns, and it must be something that has the most benefit and the most impact on the residents of the community. And I would like to draw your attention to page 14 of the report here, which gives us 7 bullet points as to what we need to consider as to whether we are going to agree to take an item forward or not. Firstly, that the issue is of local and preferably current concern, whether the undertaking of the review can be linked to the community vision and corporate delivery plan, whether the topic is already being reviewed elsewhere in the council, is the topic one that is capable of being influenced by one of the overview and scrutiny committees, is the topic of manageable scope, not too wide-ranging and yet of sufficient size to warrant a scrutiny review, and whether sufficient resources are available to support the scrutiny review. And we, as we always do, have to bear in mind that our officers are very, very caught up with working on COVID at the moment. And lastly, whether the review should be undertaken by the management committee itself or delegated to another committee or a task and finish group. So bearing those things in mind, let's turn to page 17, which is the requests for scrutiny issues for the next municipal year that are new to us. Some of them actually aren't new, but we'll look at them as we go through them. And the first one on that list is from Philip Meadowcroft. And Philip, welcome to the meeting. The issue is that WBC member compliance with the Constitution, e.g. Standards Committee and Audit Committee. And Philip, I believe you want to make a statement. So carry on, please. You're muted. You're muted.
And I'm now not muted, I think.
You're not muted now.
Thank you very much. My request is triggered by the failure of members and senior officials to apply the Constitution since May 2019 in respect of the Standards Committee, together with the Audit Committee's realisation that budget numbers they approved last November were then altered before they went to the Executive. I think it would not be appropriate for the review to be investigated by any panel of members or officials like the Constitution Review Working Group. Failure for 20 months to stick to the rules of the Constitution was made by the decision of the full Council without any intervention by the monitoring officer. And for such a panel to act as investigator, judge and jury under such circumstances is clearly not an impartial review. This is a strategic opportunity for your committee members, Councillor Hillier-Simons, to put the safeguarding of the Constitution at the core of maintaining the integrity of working members and officers and the trust which residents place on them, as they will be in the forthcoming local elections on May 6. Under such circumstances, when you come to reviewing my request, may I ask the committee be mindful of seeking the investigation to be undertaken by an external investigator, like a retired QC or a High Court judge, rather than from the go-to panel of investigators, which Wokingham normally use. In doing so, the investigation can be free of any political or administrative bias and thus be genuinely independent. This will be the best way, I think, to ensure public confidence that a thoroughly impartial and party politics-free investigation will occur and result in avoiding the kind of honest mistake which both the leader of the council and the chief executive have repeatedly characterised recent events. I trust the committee will give my request, Chairman, fair and open assessment, and thank you very much for the opportunity to give that statement.
Thank you, Philip. I'd just like to point out very quickly that I did answer a question similar to this at the last meeting, and it has already been discussed at the full council. But anyway, I'm going to open it up to the other members to make any comments if they wish, and then after that we'll have a vote on whether we take it forward or not. I've got Andrew and then Jim. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is it permissible for me to ask Mr. Meadowcroft for some clarification?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for raising this issue, this very important issue, Mr. Meadowcroft. Am I right in understanding that you are calling for an independent overview and scrutiny of this issue rather than referring it to one of the overview and scrutiny committees? You're muted.
You're muted still.
I'm trying to be a good boy. I understand why you asked the question. Obviously, I refer it to your committee. It's the way it goes forward, if you are minded to go forward with this, that gives me some discomfort. I think the Constitution Review Working Group, and the way it is created and its membership, and the fact that it is not reported in the way that these other council committees are, is not the best means forward. Where we have a situation, or the council faces a situation where the full council meeting made an error which it was not aware that it was making, and that is a very awkward position to be in. And I would hope that what I'm proposing is to get the council out of this awkward position by having a really sharp review of the Constitution as a whole in the way that it is framed, because it is the product of a number of years of amendments and so forth and so on, and it could do with a damn good MOT, if you like, which I think could be prepared by a legal person who is unattached to the council in any way. And I suspect there are quite a number of those in the Thames Valley area who are available.
Andrew, you want to come back?
Yes, thank you very much for that helpful clarification. It seems to me that you're really asking for two different matters to be looked at. One is the Constitution itself, and whether it is still fit for purpose and how it might be improved. And the other issue is or concerns compliance with the Constitution. So I see that there are two issues there, and it seems to me that on our agenda, it is the latter issue that's being addressed. I have a lot of sympathy, with where you're coming from, on these incredibly important matters. My own personal point of view, okay, and this is a personal point of view, is that I believe that if this matter was referred to an Overview and Scrutiny Committee, that it would provide that committee an opportunity to really, really prove its mettle, to demonstrate complete objectivity, open-mindedness, and a willingness to get to grips with this issue and to build trust, with our residents. So that I would very much support that approach.
Okay, we finished, Andrew. Jim, then.
Chair, could I just ask a quick question or make a quick statement? I know Philip Meadowcroft from work, and he's sort of like a friend to me, really.
Okay.
But I feel uncomfortable voting on anything he's asking for, and I feel I should keep out this one and abstain, please.
Right, thank you very much. That's most honest of you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Much has been made recently about Wokinham's objective to become a golden thread for residents. I think the Standards Committee and the press coverage of all of that has dented public confidence. And I believe something along this lines with scrutiny of how we do our business is something that's actually key to try to rebuild some of that confidence. Fully understand it was an honest mistake, but the way it's been expressed and discussed and publicised, I believe we need to try to rebuild confidence. So I would support taking this to scrutiny. Thank you.
Rochelle.
Yes, hi. I do think it's a very good idea to have somebody externally looking at it, because we've looked at it all this time and we've missed a few things. It would be useful to do something like the Center for Scrutiny to look at it, and they could recommend somebody who could check over what we're doing just to make sure that we're doing the proper things. I would rather do the proper things for everybody and comply with all the rules.
Thank you. Emma.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with what Andrew is saying, actually, on this, and I'm afraid my feeling is quite strongly that to bring in an independent judge will cost a fortune, and we're talking probably of about £3,000 or £4,000 a day, which is a lot of money, which could be spent on much more applications of other things that we need to spend our money on, to be honest with you. And we are in a very, very difficult position where obviously we're having to support a lot of people around. I do agree with what Rochelle and Andrew and Jim have said, that yes, maybe we do need to look at things. I do feel, though, that at the moment this is not the right time.
Thank you, Emma. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I take the points that have been made before, and I won't repeat them, as I agree with much of what has been said, with the exception that indeed taking this to outside review, there's not only the cost implication, but there are two other implications. One is it sets a precedent for all such decision making. And we know that lawyers are extremely good picking apart arguments and continuing the debate ad infinitum, to use one of their own expressions. And that would also be extremely costly in terms of time in democratic decision making. So I certainly would not support this going outside. I think the proper place to address this awful situation that we got ourselves in, and Philip was very good in pointing it out, is actually to sort it out ourselves. So I would say that it is within the council. Now, whether it's overview and scrutiny or not, I think I'm still open to question myself.
Thank you, Graham. Sarah?
Thank you and good evening, and thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft, for bringing this to us. It's a really big concern that I too share as well about what's happened. I don't know what's within the remit of what we can actually ask for in this committee. I guess we can make recommendations to the executive, and that is where we could do things. I wonder if what we should be doing within the remit of this committee is do a scrutiny of what happened, and if one of those recommendations happens to be to ask for an independent investigation, that's something that this committee can make subject to a vote. But I do think we need to do some scrutiny of it to really try and understand what happened and see if it requires an independent look into this. I don't want to argue whether we should or shouldn't based on cost at this stage, because ultimately, and that excuse can be used for all manner of things. I do believe that there was a very, very serious issue. There is a loss of trust from the public, and we do need to address this. So I would very much like to see this come to scrutiny for us to look at, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Croy.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to be supporting either of these proposals. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about how the Standards Committee works, how the conclusions are arrived at. I've been on both the receiving end and the giving end of issues and standards, and I can't see either or any of the results being changed by a different composition of the committee. All members were sent a very long and detailed letter by the CEO explaining the legal position, so I just don't see the value in any further scrutiny of that letter, because that's effectively what we would be doing. And to summarise, the letter said, because council voted for it, that made it legitimate, because we voted for something that wasn't breaking the law. It was an internal rule, effectively, that we changed. And the very, very simple way around that, as I said in full council last week, is to make sure that constitutional changes can only happen where a threshold of members agree. So in many organisations, for example, in the Labour Party, we would say 2/3 of the members present must agree to a rule change, otherwise there's no rule change. And that's true of our party. I suspect it's true of all of our parties. I suspect it's true of all of the sort of civic organisations that we're all variously a member of. It's true of my neighbourhood action group, for example. There must be a minimum threshold to agree constitutional changes. A very simple change to our constitution could prevent our constitution being changed on the fly, which is effectively what happened last time. In terms of bringing somebody else in, if we cannot manage our own constitution, and if we are incapable of fixing our own constitution, then I'm not sure we really have much right to be trying to manage the borough and trying to manage the council. Frankly, it's a constitution. It's not that complicated. We do not need to go outside, and I won't be supporting either of these recommendations.
Thank you very much, Andy. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? In which case, I'll move to a vote, and the vote is on whether we take this issue forward to be scrutinised or not. If we do take it forward, then we can discuss how, but let's have that first vote to begin with. Can I see those in favour of accepting this onto our scrutiny programme? Can you put your hands up, please? Thank you. And those against? put your hands down. Can we have everybody's hand down first, please? Otherwise, some people will be voting twice. Thank you very much. Now, those against taking it forward, hands up now, please. We've only had 10 people voting so far.
Madam Chairman, it's Emma Hobbs here. Again, my hand is fluttering again.
Hand is actually up, Emma. Don't worry.
Oh, right, thank you.
That's fine. Okay, are there any other people wanting to vote? And can I see abstentions? Hands down those who've just voted. One more hand to go. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. And I'll also abstain as the chairman. Well, the result of that is that there were 5 votes in favour of taking it forward, 6 votes against, and 2 abstentions. So many apologies, Philip, but it hasn't been agreed, I'm afraid. But thank you very much for raising it. And I can assure you that we do know now how it happened, and it has been put right, and I don't think it will ever happen again. So at least you can be assured about that. But thank you very much indeed for raising it. We really appreciate that. Thank you. Right, now then, let's move on to the rest of that list. The second one, sorry, I've lost my agenda. Bring it up again.
The second one's from Shirley Boyd about reviewing
right.
actions on motions.
It's the one from Shirley, isn't it, about whether we should progress on actions agreed in motions approved by the council. Anybody like to speak on that? Paul? Oh no, your hand's down now.
Yes. Madam Chair, I was going to try and propose my additional item, but do you want to take that at the end?
Yes, please, because we have got something about trees, haven't we, on number 20. So we'll come to you then, if that's okay. Right, I've got Andy and then Jim.
Oh, me first, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Shirley asked me to say very on this one. I think, and it's something I've sort of felt as well, is that despite all the brouhaha about what motions are passed and what motions aren't passed, often it seems to me they're passed, and they sink without trace, and you've got no idea of knowing what happens if they're followed up. And you know, sometimes politicians are accused of being in a sixth form debating society, and sometimes I think motions have the same sort of impact as a sixth form debating society, and we do need to follow up. You know, I can think of motions that passed 4 or 5 years ago, even before I was a councillor, when I used to come and watch for fun, and there's nothing that's happened in regards to those motions. And I think a related point to this would be, how do the public know which motions have been passed? How do councillors know which motions have been passed? If I want to introduce a motion on mental health, for example, do I have to scroll back through every single individual council agenda and see if there are any other mental health motions? Or do I, from memory, remember the one which Nikki and the independent councillor for Charville passed in, I think, 2015? That there's no way of checking. So I think a look at what happens to motions and how we track what happens and what information is available definitely needs to be done.
How would you see that happening, Andy? Would it be at the next overview and scrutiny meeting after the motion was passed? Because I do agree with you, unless you as the proposer follow it up yourself, you don't really know what's happening to it.
I think the first step would be some sort of easily accessible list. I hesitate to call it a database, but just a list of what motions have been passed. And I'm sure that the excellent people in Democratic Services have got such a list somewhere, but it doesn't seem to be available on the. It doesn't seem to be available on the website. And it would be nice if there were one document, like we have the Constitution, which just had the motions, and then, as a first step, we could perhaps look through them and see, well, this doesn't feel right in the light of what we know is happening. We're looking at motion X, we've got action Y, but why is there a disconnect? Yeah, I mean, I think it might be an ongoing thing, because it might also take some officers a bit of getting used to that, council's passed a motion, and, sometimes I think we pass a motion and it's used to rubber stamp the things that the executive or officers want it to rubber stamp, rather than actually changing the direction of what we're doing.
We want to be sure something's happened as a result.
Yeah, and I think it would be an ongoing thing. I think the first thing would be to actually get the list up there, and then there might be, it would then be up to perhaps members to bring to scrutiny's attention items which they don't think have been actioned. Yep.
Okay, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Last year, we attempted a trial by Democratic Services of producing a list of not only the motions but the actions offered or agreed within the full council meeting, so we could actually follow up on the whole lot. I think it's wider than motions. I think there are things that we get in answers where people promise to do things, and we then have no sight of what the outcome was. If we could resurrect that list, which I know that Anne very kindly ran for a couple of meetings just to try it out, then we could have the thing that Andy was just talking about, some sort of control to see what's happened to those things to make sure they have been fulfilled.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Sarah.
Thank you very much. I agree with where this is coming from. There are questions asked and things don't get followed up, and as well as the motions. But I'm conscious that we shouldn't really be looking for the solutions in this meeting. We're looking at scrutiny items. So I think this is a case of requesting a report that comes to this committee at some point, where we can actually look at how this could be dealt with and what currently is done and what needs to happen going forward, rather than us actually decide how we fix the problem now. I'm conscious we've got quite a lot of items to get through, and if we're going to debate each one individually, we could be here till midnight.
Okay, thank you, Emma.
Very briefly, I absolutely agree with what Andy's saying, which you'll probably be quite shocked about. But I do agree with it. I think it would help. I don't think it's that difficult just to join up a booklet or something with the dates, the time of the meetings, and it's just a yes, no, or this was changed. That's all I've got to say.
That's lovely, thank you. And Graham, you've got your hand up? No, it's Malcolm, beg your pardon. Malcolm.
Yes, I agree with the statement just made as well. It's no use saying at the end of a thing, effectively noted. It does need to have some action allocated to it, but you need a list to get started. At the moment, we don't even have that list coming back to us saying what the result was and what the plan was in sufficient detail. So I'm in favour of what we've just agreed, or what we've just discussed.
Right, and last comment from Graham.
I find it quite astonishing as only a 2.5-year-old boy that we don't have this sort of audit trail. So I concur with everything that Andy said.
That's super. It seems to me that there's a general agreement about this. So can I see, could you raise your hand if you're against taking this one forward? It doesn't seem to be anyone against, so we'll agree with that one then. And we can tell Shirley Boyd that we will be taking that one forward. Now, numbers 3, 4 and 13 seem to me to be very much linked. The only new bit is about the impact of the new green sacks, but we have already got a waste item on the our own forward programme. So what I'm going to suggest is that we lump all those three together, 3, 4 and adding in 13, and we keep it on our own forward programme. Does anyone have a problem with that? Because we're going to be looking at it anyway. So
can I just comment? It's not a problem. It's just that there's actually two separate things here. So one of them is looking at the existing service and things that are working. The other one is actually, I've been informed by officers that there's going to be a waste strategy. So while it's connected, it's more forward-looking, and the other one's looking at existing service. So I think they need to be two items that are looked at a bit differently. And the waste strategy could be one of the bigger ones that we look at, because there's going to be a lot of change in this area over the coming years, and getting this committee involved at an early stage, because this is going to affect every single resident in our borough.
I take that point, but it shouldn't be too difficult to widen it out when we look at it to include the new waste strategy.
I guess my point is just to make sure that we get involved with the waste strategy from the beginning, and we don't get sent it the day before it gets approved at executive, like it often happens.
Fine. Andy?
Sorry, haven't we just looked at waste?
Yeah, but we could have this at a fairly late stage in the municipal year, couldn't we? Because we'll really need a few months to find out how the new waste sacks are going down.
But we're not going to have a scrutiny session just on the waste sacks, are we?
No. If you look at the programme that we've got, if you've got your agenda in front of you.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
3 is recycling, food waste and green waste. 4 is the waste strategy. And 13 is the recycling following the new sack. So I think we could look at all of those 3 at the same meeting, and perhaps after a few months when we've seen how it all settles down. Rochelle?
I do agree that we probably could wait a little while to see how they're all settling down, because we don't know what's going to happen at this point. I found the green sacks down at the end of our street occasionally being blown down there, unfortunately. So we would like to see how people feel about it as well. Do possibly a survey of residents to see whether they like the green sacks or not, and whether it's useful and whether it's keeping the waste more dry. But I'm not sure if we use. I don't know how dry it will keep. It's worked okay so far, but I put it inside the black bin so it doesn't blow down the street with the rest of the sacks that blow down there.
Yeah, we'd have to leave it a while to see how it settles down. And I've got Andrew, that's the last speaker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what Sarah was saying. I think it is important that we recognise 2 discrete but linked issues, if that's not a contradiction. There's the day-to-day management of recycling, the food waste, the green waste, the new bags. That's one issue. I would argue, I think, as you said, Chair, that's probably left fairly late into the next municipal year. The other issue is the waste strategy, and that could be potentially a very, very big, important item. The timing for that, of course, is going to depend on a lot of other factors, including, I understand, national legislation. But I think we need to be prepared to treat these as 2 separate items.
Okay, so you're suggesting we take them forward, but at different meetings. Does anybody have a problem with that, or shall we agree that? Put your hand up if you're not happy with us doing it that way. Andy?
I'm still struggling to see how our scrutiny is going to improve these things. If we were at the stage where a new contract was being entered into, and I haven't seen anyone say that, then it would make more sense. And I'm reminded very much of the grass cutting contract review that we did a couple of years ago, and because the grass cutting was inadequate, there was a huge fuss about it, and we ended up spending a lot of time looking at grass cutting, which in the overall scheme of things is although it gets a lot of play on social media and things like that, it's not probably the most important thing that this committee should have spent its time looking at. And we need to be focusing on how are we going to change things. If people are sure that we're going to be able to change something as a result of the scrutiny, then yes, let's go for it. But I'm still not convinced, to be honest.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. My understanding is the current waste contract is up in 2026, but they need to start looking at how that's going to look from 2023, what I understand from officers. But the other thing to bear in mind is with the Environment Bill going through Parliament at the moment, there are going to be changes, legislative changes that are going to need to take place at local government level. And I've been informed that there is going to be a waste strategy that's going to look to the future. Obviously, we're trying to get, I think the target is 70% recycling. So actually being involved with that waste strategy, and as I said earlier, it is something that affects every single person in this borough. So there is definitely an interest that we look at this. I think it's absolutely crucial, and we get in there at the beginning. So we need to talk to officers at the outset and understand what their plan is, when they're going to start consulting, when they start opening this up, and that's the point we need to get involved. But I think it's a very important issue.
Thank you very much, everyone. Can you put your hand up if you are against taking these three things forward, even if we deal with them at two separate meetings? Right, there's nobody against, so we'll take those through. Number 5, provision of affordable housing across the borough. Shall we go straight to a vote on this one, or would anyone want to speak against it or for it? Right, well, let's vote then. Those who are happy to take it forward, you put your hands up. Okay, and anyone against? Right, that one is carried. Thank you very much. Right, now looking at number 6, it strikes me that there are two options here. It could go along with number 27 under the Community Scrutiny Committee, or we could combine it with our own forward plan, which is about... we've got one on the website anyway coming up next time, so really those are two ways forward. So Alison.
I think it could be combined with looking at the anti-poverty policy, because being deprived of access to the online community, all the services on the internet, is certainly I think among the levels of the indicators of deprivation. So that would be my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good idea. Sarah?
Thank you. Interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that one, but I guess my reservation about combining it with anti-poverty is that it's not the only reason why people aren't online. And for some people, it could be they're of a certain age and they don't want to be online, and it might not be anything to do with any socioeconomic factors. So I think there's two options. We could look at it combined with equalities, because it's about equality of access. Or we could consider it, we're supposed to be looking at the council websites. That was an item that we were supposed to have, and looking at the digital access side of things. So it could be combined with that, which would make sense in my mind.
Yeah, just looking up the CMC list, it says, number 27 says broadband, what's being done to ensure every resident has the best access? To my mind, that's similar. Anyway, Andrew. And then Jim.
Yeah, I might be totally sort of out of order in saying this, but I'm just wondering what sort of levers does the council actually have to help increase internet access for our residents? I think it would be great, if we do. Okay, but I cannot off the top of my head, think what they might be, but I hope I'm proved wrong.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
I'd just like to support what Sarah said at the end there. I think this fits with the improvements we're trying to make to all of our services, and we're encouraging people online as well as helping them. If we get the services correct, so that the level of customer service is of a high standard, then people will follow that through. So as that's a programme which is going to cover all of our services, I think it should be widened to cover that.
Yeah. And we are going to be looking, I think, in the forward programme at some stage on how we communicate with residents, so maybe come with that. Anyway, Andy.
Yeah, it's going to be Mr. Negative Head again. I'm just wondering, how responsible is the borough for getting people online? You know, if we're worried about people sort of accessing services, we should be looking at adult literacy. That's a far greater barrier to accessing services and taking part in modern life than having internet access. And I just think is it a whole scrutiny item? You know, we're going to have officers running around writing reports on this. It's going to be very interesting, and then it is going to influence nothing that the council does. I mean, I appreciate that you know, one of the features of poverty and perhaps even living in some of our remote rural areas is poor broadband access, but I don't think that qualifies it as a scrutiny item in its own right.
Would you put it with another one? Yeah, as you say, it's a fairly small thing. Would you add it perhaps to 6 and 7?
Let me have another look at them and I'll come back to you, Pauline.
Okay, don't worry. Don't want to put you on the spot. Jim, your hand's still up, and then Alison.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to say, I agree with what Andy is saying. I don't think this is about helping residents get online. I think it's about providing services through whatever channel the resident believes is the right channel for them, and making sure they're appropriate and encouraging them through that experience to go online.
Okay, well, let's have a vote on it. Oh, sorry, Alison, you need to speak first, and then we'll vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back and say there's some excellent points raised about the variety of reasons that some of our residents don't, you know, access the council online and various other things. And so I think the point came out, I think, really that this is something perhaps we need to have at the forefront of our mind, but it would come into a variety of other agenda items. For example, as was said, looking at the council website. So when we're looking at council communications, and also looking at how we support, I mean, we've done a fantastic lot of good work making sure that many of our students have got laptops, and when we can continue to do that sort of programme of helping, because actually the programme wasn't just young people, was it? It was also about helping our older and vulnerable citizens to have a laptop to use at home to go to do their shopping. So yes, perhaps it's not a simple agenda item. It's something that perhaps can be fed into many different areas: communications, poverty, and other access areas. I submitted things that residents had raised with me, and really pleased to have the input of the other members tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, the last speaker, then we'll go to a vote on it.
Yeah, just a small point, really. I think there's a link, really, also with our own housing areas, with broadband and accessing our services. So I think it's that part as well. Okay.
Well, Paul, if you could put your hand down, and then thank you. And I'll ask everybody that would like it to go forward, whether with something else or whether as a separate thing, we can decide as time goes on, but who would like to have it go forward? You put your hand up now, please. Okay, and there's somebody else still voting. Okay, all those hands down then, please. And is there anybody against it going forward? Thank you. And I'll abstain on this one as chairman. So that's 11 votes in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. So that one does go forward. 7 and 8, they're very much aligned, and they are already on our forward programme. So I don't think we need to vote anymore on those because they're already happening. So let's look at number 9, poverty in the borough. Sarah, did you put this one forward? It could possibly go along with 7 and 8, and we could look at it at the same time.
Socio-economic factors are not part of the Equalities Act, sadly, so it doesn't technically fall under that remit, and poverty is such a big issue in its own right. I think what we actually agreed in this municipal year when we were looking at the COVID stuff, and this is something that needs to be separate to COVID, it's an issue long before COVID, is that this was going to be something that we were going to do a deeper dive on and actually have come back several times. I believe that was something that, I can't remember who it was that proposed that aspect of it, guided actually, and it's something we agreed to do. So I'm hoping that we can continue that as a standalone item, please.
Yeah, well, we can do it all in the same package, but whether we have it as a separate meeting or not depends, how big an item it is. But it is on our programme anyway.
I'm happy to put it on the same meeting as equalities, but it needs to be a separate item to equalities.
Okay, take that point. What about poverty then? Does that go along with it, or do you want that as a separate item? Sarah, was this yours?
Sorry, hang on. What?
Suggestion: the poverty in the borough co-produced strategy.
So I thought that's what we were talking about.
No, we were talking about equality. Well, we were at cross purposes. Talk about poverty.
Okay, the point was that poverty was supposed to be the separate item to equalities.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so we want to see equalities and we want to see poverty, but it's 2 separate items. Yeah, sorry. I don't know who misunderstood each other there. But yeah, they're definitely things that need to be going forward. The thing with the equalities, just going back to that, is obviously we've been requesting this for 18 months, 2 years, and we still haven't had anything. It's really crucial that we don't get the pushback from the officers on this. I know they're busy, but this is such a crucial item. We do need to see it. But the same with poverty as well. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew.
Could I also add on item 9, poverty in the borough, there's specific reference to this being a co-produced strategy. Now, one of the overview and scrutiny management, I think it was management meetings that I attended, really sticks in my mind, and it's the one where we had a lot of input when looking at the borough's COVID response. A lot of input from others outside, from partners in that response, and I thought that was an incredibly effective meeting. So what I'm asking for here, is that the focus is also on evaluating the process by which this anti-poverty strategy is being co-produced, because I think that's really, really important, and it worked so well, I think, at that previous meeting. And the SEND strategy is excellent co-production.
Right, so let's vote on whether you want the poverty one to go forward onto our forward programme. Those in favour, put your hand up.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Chair, sorry to interrupt the voting. Could we just say, is this about examining the borough? Because we've heard that the borough is producing a poverty strategy, an anti-poverty strategy.
Yeah.
So this is an examination of the anti-poverty strategy, not a separate piece of work.
I assume so, Andy, to see sort of how it's bedding in and whether there's more that needs to be done. Is that how you understood it, Sarah?
Well, but it's also the development of the strategy, isn't it? Because at the moment, the strategy hasn't been completed. So that's what we want to get involved in.
Yeah, so we don't want to just do the scrutiny aspect. We want to do the overview aspect of this and actually set it on the right direction from the outset. So what we don't want is what happened with the equalities, where it happens without any input and it's too late. We need to be involved from the very outset of it.
Okay. Right, I've got the people voting in favour. Those hands go down, please.
Chair, I'm in favour as well. I missed the vote.
You want to put your hands up again then if you're voting in favour?
Chair, would you
be absolutely clear.
Would you
Those in favour, hands up. Right, and I will also vote in favour, so that's unanimous. That's 13-0. Great. Okay, let's move on then. The local plan update is already in our forward programme, so we don't need to talk about that one. 11, I would suggest, is part and parcel of 12, the post-COVID things that we're doing. So I would suggest that we put those together. But any comments, Jim? Oh, no, it wasn't Jim. And those are already on our forward plan anyway, so they're covered. 13 we've already dealt with. 14, the road and pavement sweeping contract, gully cleansing. Any views on that?
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up.
That's
sorry.
okay.
The reason why I brought that forward, I know that the bigger, wider contract came forward earlier, and there's been a lot of problems with the road sweeping and gully cleansing that are ongoing that haven't really been fixed. And again, this is something that I get a lot of residents contact me about. And I understand that specifically with the street cleansing, it's obviously gone to our contractor who has then subcontracted it. And I wonder if, like we did with the grass cutting, where we actually got the contractor in, it might be worth having a session where we get the contractor in and directly communicate with them. I don't know what other members feel, but it's something I get a lot of complaints about, and there hasn't been much progress yet.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, because I've got 3 pavements in my ward that I've been getting complaints about. 2 have now one's been sorted out, the other 2 are still ongoing. So yeah, that does sound to me quite a good idea. Paul?
I agree with what Sarah's just said. I've had lots of issues with street sweeping and road sweeping and gully emptying in Winnersh. There's many gullies have not been emptied like they should have done. There's roads that are missed, and I've found out that some of the roads were not even on the schedule. So there's a clear problem overall, and we need to review this contract.
Okay. Is there anybody that would like to vote against that? If you put your hand down, Paul. Thank you. Anybody against taking this one forward? Okay, then that's agreed. We do that. Public Protection Partnership. We did agree at the council meeting that we were going to opt out of that, so I'm not quite sure what's behind this one. Sarah, did you put it forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a year's notice has been served, whether we agree with it or not. But the point is having it more in-house. This is one hell of a thing to happen. There's going to be some issues with resilience for the council. There's going to be issues with the cost of it all. This is something that's going to be a very delicate process. And again, particularly the environmental health side of things, which is something that, I mean, certainly I deal with environmental health a lot at the moment for my residents. They're actually quite scared, my residents, by what was voted on and the impact that's going to have for some of the challenges they face. This needs some very, very careful oversight of the process that it goes through to try and make the best of the situation, I guess. Sorry,
I didn't realise you hadn't finished.
No, so I just think this needs some very, very careful scrutiny, because this is quite a drastic change to the council, and it will have ramifications for all our residents.
I think people are aware of that, but I've been on the council for rather longer than you, Sarah, and I can remember when we had it all in-house, and they coped beautifully. It was much, much, much better, 1,000 times better than it is now.
Then why was PPP set up then?
Yeah. Anyway, I've got Alison, and then Jim, and then Andrew.
I was actually chair of the PPP several years ago, and at that point it did seem to be working very well. Our residents were happy, but I know that in the recent years, residents just feel very much it's not a local service, and they're not getting, when they call for help, they're not getting the response that they should do, and the one that we as councillors expect to be provided. So I certainly think we should be scrutinising this and making sure that what is happening is the improvement that the ambition was behind when we passed the motion at full council.
So really, it should read something like public protection partnership contract. How well is the new system working? Something like that. Okay, Jim.
Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not sure we want to see how the new system's working. I think we want to be assured that the transition from the old to the new works as best as it can, and this seems to be the ideal project for a scrutiny committee. It's tailor-made. It's exactly the sort of thing. Well, I mean, ideally, we would be involved in the earlier decision, because it frankly came out of the blue for us. We just weren't expecting it at all. But it seems someone has made the decision, and now the rest of us have got to try and make it work as best as possible. Yeah, but it's an ideal thing for us to be involved as it goes through, not reporting on it, or scrutinising it 2 years after the event.
I think you're right, but it is also about whether the impact is good as well. So I think it's really both those things as well. Jim?
Yeah, Andy's stolen my words. This should be about making sure the transition is as smooth as possible and what we provide is as good as possible. So therefore, it should be subject to scrutiny. Okay, and Andrew?
Yes, I was basically going to say exactly the same as Andy and also as Jim. A decision has been made. It's a big decision, and it is one that lends itself now, for scrutiny as we go through this transition period, and as the new system begins to bed down. So I think this is a very, very important item for scrutiny.
So what about if we add a few words in, if that's okay with Sarah? So it reads something like PPP contract to ensure that the transition is as smooth as possible and to scrutinise what the impact has been.
I think that sounds okay. Yeah, it's a transition, so yeah, thank you.
Right, is anybody against us doing that? Let's do it that way around. I don't see any hands. Anyone abstaining? Thank you. Neil, did you get those extra words?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. Number 16, local nature recovery strategy, new legislation. What's that one all about, Sarah?
You can tell it's from me again, can't you? The Environment Bill is going to mandate that local authorities have a local nature recovery strategy, either as themselves or working in partnership with other authorities and partners. As to when this will happen, this will probably happen later on in the municipal year, but it's a really important thing because this is about biodiversity, net gain, the recovery of our habitats, and something that people are quite passionate about. Again, it's an opportunity to get ahead of this and be involved at the overview stage and not just see something at the end. There's a chance for real collaborative working. So I suspect the way things are going, this might be later on in the municipal year, but it's something I guess I wanted to put out there to be on the radar so that we know it's horizon scanning, so that we know to call it at the appropriate time and speak with officers on that. What exactly would you envisage us scrutinising? The development of the local nature recovery strategy. The council's going to have to do it by law. Right. So we can make sure that it gets set on the right path and actually achieves what's best for our borough, for the nature, for our community. But I just don't want it to be something that we see the day before it goes to executive. This is something that we can see from the outset in the development. But as I say, it's not going to be one of the early ones that we do. So it would be something fairly late on in the municipal year? Yeah, it depends on how the Environment Bill goes. It has been delayed again in Parliament. But it is something on the radar. As I say, I wanted to put it down for horizon scanning and raise awareness to members that it is going to be coming up. Okay, Andy.
Thank you. So just following on then from what Sarah was saying, so presumably if the legislation hasn't been passed yet, and assuming it's passed later on this year and it means the council has to do something, the council won't be expected to do anything immediately, will it? There'll be a year or two's notice. So I think in that sort of spirit and in the spirit of horizon scanning, it's perhaps not something that should be on our work programme for this year, because I just don't think there'll be anything for us to do this year, but it should be something we should have. I don't know if we have like a reserve list or a horizon scanned list or possible future things to keep our eyes on list. I don't think it's a work programme for the next 8 or 9 months, though, is it?
Okay, thank you. Emma.
Now, Andy, don't fall down with shock, please. I actually agree with Andy. From what I can gather, this, although it's been waffled a lot about at the moment, it's very unlikely, from what I've heard, it'll come even into legislation until 2022, if they get time. But I think I mean, I know I'm not standing, but I think the Scrutiny Committee have a lot to deal with over the next year with everything that's happening. And I think just adding one further thing, which is not actually all that urgent at the moment. It's just my thinking.
Thank you. Emma. Sorry, Malcolm.
It's exactly the same. What Andy and Emma have just said, I agree with. It's just getting to be a dangerous pattern, isn't it?
Paul.
Thank you. From what Sarah's already outlined, it's something which is going to be coming up. We just don't know quite when. So we need to make sure we keep a track of that so it's not lost. I'd prefer to have it on the list of items, but we get to that when we know the legislation has gone through, and then we can start to act on that.
So
I just don't want it lost.
You suggest putting it on the list of things at the bottom of the forward programme for each year.
Yeah,
okay.
or even later this year, in case we need to act on it sometime in the next municipal year.
Righto. Right, then can I see those? If you put your hands down, Emma and Paul, thank you. Could I see anybody that would like to take it forward then, even if without a specific date, and to see whether the legislation gets passed? You put your hands up if you think we should take it forward. Right, so everybody voted?
Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what it is I'm voting for. I mean, I do want it, as Paul said, I don't want us to lose sight of it, and I want
well, I think
democratic services to be aware of it. But I don't want officers running around preparing a report on what might happen.
Well, let me clarify. I think what we're voting for is that we put it in the list of things at the bottom of the forward programme to be looked at some stage in the future as relevant. Okay, so hands up if you think that that's a good thing to do. Right, and those hands down then, please. And can I, Andy, your hand's still up, thank you. Can I see those who are against us putting it on the forward programme? You've only... All right, that's 6 all, which leaves me with the casting vote. I think I am going to vote in favour of it going at the bottom of the forward programme, not to go into the next municipal year, unless it does come up sooner, but to put it down there perhaps with a date on of 2022. Okay. Sorry if that's against what some of you want to do, but
I hope, Madam Chairman, you're not talking about 1922.
No, I'm not. No.
You are.
That's the historian in me. 2022. And if the legislation doesn't come through, then we just drop it off. Okay. Right, number 17, renewable energy installations. Again, I'm not exactly sure what this is all about. So, Lib Dems, you put it on. What's behind it, please? Yeah.
No, I mean, this could be something for consideration for the maybe a third iteration of the task and finish group. I don't know, but this is in relation to the renewable energy generation in the borough, which is going to be quite a big part of the climate emergency agenda. And so it could be on the task and finish group in the future. It could go with the green recovery, so it could be tied up with one of those. But it is an item in its own right that does need some scrutiny.
So you'd put it with the green recovery? I think that's a good idea. Yeah, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. Would air quality go with that as well?
No,
okay.
No. Air quality is a different topic. It needs to be treated separately.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, just so I think this is part of the task and finish agenda, and I think we risk doubling up the workload of somebody, not least of members, if we have it as a separate item for task and finish. I don't think it's part of green recovery. It's certainly part of the climate emergency action plan task and finish agenda. We haven't looked at that aspect of the action plan in any sort of detail at all. We've been focusing, as you know, on the bigger items, and I think that's something we should expect the task and finish group to look at. And I really don't think it should be outside of that, just because of we're going to have so much to do. It's just going to be a doubling up.
Well, we have got the task and finish group already.
Exactly.
Up,
yeah.
haven't we? And Sarah.
I think my concern is that if we have it on one of these things, it will be very, very difficult for the task and finish group to look at it in any detail. The task and finish group will always look at it in much more detail, and I think always have a better chance of influencing outcomes than a one-off report to a general meeting, especially where it's going to be subsumed into a much larger report.
I'm happy with it going on the task and finish group.
Yeah, Alison, do you have a view on that? Because you chair that group.
I presume we're talking about a new, when we refresh and revise and form again once we've completed our current task.
Okay, lovely. So that goes to task and finish. The impact of Brexit is actually already on our forward programme, so we don't need to talk about that. Air quality. Sarah, is that about what the task and finish group is looking at as well?
No, sorry, air quality is, while it's interlinked, it's a separate issue to climate emergency. So air quality, we're talking about air pollution, stuff that's created, locally and breathed in locally. We have 3 air quality management areas in the borough, but air quality, while some of the measures for climate emergency time with it is an issue in its own right, it's something separate.
What exactly would you want us to scrutinise, though?
What we're doing about it.
Right, because we've already got the measures, haven't we?
Yes, I would argue that they're not necessarily effective, and there are issues with what we're measuring and what we're measuring to, and we do need to open up and look at what's actually going on in air quality. All we measure at the moment is the nitrogen dioxide. We are going to be getting some of the particulate monitors going in, and we need to see what's going on there and actually talk about what's going to happen with that information and what we're going to do going forward. So we do breach from the modelling data the World Health Organisation limits in places, so we do need to look at it.
Alison, your hand's up. Alison?
Sorry, I think my hand was just left up.
Ah, okay. Well, there don't seem to be any other comments, so let's move straight to a vote. Those who would like to see us scrutinise that, if you could put up your hands. Right. Oh, we're still voting. Any other votes in favour? Right. Those hands down then, please. And anybody against? Hands up if you are against it going forward. I don't see any hands. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. So that is carried by a narrow majority. Thank you very much. Right, now we move now to Paul's trees. Paul, would you like to introduce what this is about, please?
Thank you, Chair. Number 20 is not my proposed additional item.
Right. No, I can see it's but the second bit of that increase in tree felling, is that related?
No, it's not at all.
Oh, okay. So we'll look at
it's a totally separate item.
Yeah. Right. So this is probably then Early Town Council and the Liberal Democrats. Is that Sarah again?
Well, firstly, I'm not an early town councillor, but the tree strategy is obviously going through. I'm not sure what stage it's at, but it's one of those issues that people feel quite passionately, quite emotive about, and it's certainly again one of those issues that a lot of residents contact me about. What happens to trees in their area, and it's on the agenda for the executive. So I do believe it's something we should be getting involved in.
Yeah, it's that we have, it's coming to executive tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, no, Thursday. And that the strategy is going to be open to people to feed in their ideas as to where they would want trees to be planted. Did you not know that?
What did I see on the floor? I saw something on the floor plan. I didn't think it was the actual tree strategy. Maybe I've misread it, but I didn't think it was the actual tree strategy coming.
No, it's not an actual tree strategy. It's the proposal to plant. I think we've got £300,000 that we've got from the Woodland Trust.
Right, so it's that I'm talking
used to plant trees and to ask the residents and schools and so on where they would like to see them planted.
No, that's great. That's not the tree strategy though, and we need to have a look at what's going on with that tree strategy. And I'm not sure when it's due to go to executive, but we do need to get sight of it.
Is that something that Task and Finish Group could look at then? Because they can look at it in more detail.
Well, I mean, if we're allowed another Task and Finish Group, I think we need to decide which topic it should be. I wouldn't want to necessarily say go for it on this one. I think we need to have a discussion as a committee as to which we think is the most likely, the best item to go to a Task and Finish Group. But one way or another, I do believe we need to look at this tree strategy.
Andrew.
Yes, if I may speak to this one as an early town councillor, we are very concerned, and many of our residents in Early and I'm suspect in other parts of the borough are very, very concerned that the procedures that enable trees to be felled are often seem to us not to be working, as transparently and as in a environmentally sort of appropriate manner, as I think many residents would like. So we would very, very much like some very thorough scrutiny of the current processes surrounding applications for tree felling. The wider issue of the tree strategy, I think, is also, since it is under development at the moment, I think that I would hope that there might still be an opportunity for Overview and Scrutiny to get involved at an early stage in the development of that tree strategy. It's interesting, Chair, that you raised this as a potential item, for a Task and Finish Group. I think there is some merit in at least considering that possibility, and perhaps also widening it out slightly, to include other let's call it green infrastructure, the tree canopy, the hedgerows, how to increase net biodiversity, and all those and such matters. But as Sarah said, quite correctly said, there will be many candidates, for potential task and finish groups, and they're not all going to be possible. So we have to prioritize. But I would definitely support any move to consider a task and finish group that would include these issues.
Okay, well, let's vote first on whether it's going to go forward or not, and then decide where it's going to be put. I've got Emma and then Andy.
Okay, thank you very much, Pauline. I agree with everything that's been said, but however, I think one of our main problems with this is the fact that when you get a developer building on a piece of land and there's a bloody great tree in their way, they just knock it down, even if it's got a TPO on it. And I think maybe one of the things that another committee could look at is tightening these rules. And if you take a tree, if a developer takes a tree down, a developer has to plant 10 further trees on that development. And it needs to be tightened up a little bit, because we hear all these horror stories with reference to, and I think I've got this right, with reference to, like, for instance, trees in my garden. I mean, we only had one dead tree, which we did take down, but it was dead. But generally, I think the general population around Charville, they're replanting at the moment. So I think the first priority is that we have to really tighten up on developers. They can't just take the piss and just knock down trees because it happens to be where they want to build a house. That's my own personal opinion.
How could scrutiny help that?
I don't think scrutiny can. I think it has to be the Environment Committee. I think they have to put something together for executive to then say, yes, we're going to pass this, and it goes straight to officers to implement when any planning application comes through. We did this years and years ago about the number of cars parked on, for houses to be built with proper car allocation. So why can't we do it with things like trees, etc.?
Would you reword number 20 then?
Can I have a look at it and come back to you and send everybody a message?
Sure. I'll take Andy and then Rochelle first, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's actually 2 or 3 different things here, because on the one hand we have the tree strategy, but it does seem to be very closely linked in the minds of the executive to the Climate Emergency Action Plan, and then which is all about new trees, and then on the other hand we have the protection and management of our existing trees, and as Andrew said, hedgerows and things like that, and they're not the same thing. They're actually very, very different things, and Emma alluded to a third, and that's the role of developers, but also something she didn't allude to, but which we have covered in Task and Finish, is trees on new estates, and how disappointing the tree survival rates are on new estates. So I'm a little bit worried that we could jump in and do something here, and actually the swimming pool is much deeper than it looks, and much wider than it looks. And I could see a task and finish, a very short-lived task and finish, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, looking at what we're doing to protect existing trees, because that is an issue for many residents, but also a separate ongoing item to make sure that the tree strategy is properly developed. But my concern about that is does it then start to stray into an area that's probably best covered by the Task and Finish on the climate emergency? Now, my own view is that the number of trees being proposed as part of the action plan, just 250,000, is such a small number in terms of the actual climate emergency plan, and I think it's just 1% of the carbon. It's actually immaterial. It doesn't matter if we do the trees or not, frankly, because they won't make any difference because there are too few of them. So I would be against the task and finish group looking at the tree strategy as part of the climate emergency action plan, because it just doesn't count. It's irrelevant. So if a separate group wanted to look at actually just making sure we've got a good tree strategy, I think that would be fair. But I still think there's a separate piece of work about looking after existing trees, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. That's helpful. Rochelle?
Well, if we're talking about developers with trees and taking down trees, that should be part of the borough design guide. And as far as that goes, so in other words, they can't remove trees. If they're removing trees, they have to replace them with 10 trees. That would be the easiest solution. And that could be part of the borough design guide review, which is happening which should be happening in the autumn, probably.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. Whilst not actually having seen what is planning to be going into the tree strategy, what my understanding is, talking to officers and the Wokingham District Veteran Tree Association, is this is actually a combination of two things. It's a combination of what we do for our existing tree cover, and it's also looking and at protecting that and developing it and rewilding, but it's also looking forward as well to the planting side of things as well. I don't see this as something that fits in with the climate emergency. Biodiversity is something in its own right. I just want to clarify that when trees are taken down, it's not the number of trees that we need to be thinking about, it's about the tree cover. So it's about how much of the tree cover that was lost, and then we look at the tree cover of what needs to be going in. But that's what the tree strategy is supposed to cover. It's looking at woodland management plans, how the council actually interacts with volunteers in the community to actually maintain our existing tree stock and make sure that it's protected, looked after. It probably will need to cover in there what happens with newly planted trees and developments, and making sure that they have a proper plan in place to make sure that they don't die, and compensation is obviously a last resort there. But it's all of this kind of thing, and that is all incorporated into the tree strategy, which should be, and I hope it is, but without sight of it I don't know. But this is why we do need to be looking at it. Thank you.
I'll take Jim, and then I'll come back to Emma to see if she's thought of any useful words. Jim?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the issue, or one of the issues of putting trees into the design guide, is the fact that developers are removing trees as under the headings of health and safety or maintenance before development is actually approved and started. So we're losing trees and hedgerows before the design guide actually comes into play.
Thank you. Emma, have you had any inspiration?
No, but I like the wording that Jim's given. I think that is fairly close to the mark, to be quite honest with you. I think it would put a little bit more pressure on developers to stop messing everybody around and destroying everything, because as Sarah says, and she's absolutely right, there isn't a thing going out at the moment to let's get some woodlands built, etc. And they are happening. But the problem is we live in Wokingham, we live in a place which everybody wants to live in, and we've got, a blade of grass in your back garden sort of thing. I like the wording what Jim's done. I have no inspiration at the moment, probably because I've been on Zoom meetings all day at work. Never mind. So, I mean, I can have a think about it, and I can send something to you, Pauline, to forward out to everybody if they would be happy with that.
Yeah. Sarah, what do you think about Jim's words? Are they adequate, or do we need Emma to have another think?
Could Jim remind me of the wording specifically for voting on, please? Thank you.
Jim?
If I can remember it myself. What I said was that developers are removing trees under the headings of maintenance or health and safety prior to the design guide actually coming into play. So I don't know how we want to word that, but it's about taking trees and hedgerows down prior.
I think Jim added into that.
Tree protection, basically.
Yes.
I think that would be a better heading, would be tree protection rather than a strategy.
Can I request two things? Firstly, that's a separate thing to the strategy, which is fine. So I'm happy with the strategy. This is a separate thing. And may I suggest that maybe Paul Fishwick might want to speak on this, because this relates to what he wanted to raise with regards to the Bearwood Lake dam, and maybe he might want to comment on that specific area. But the tree strategy is one thing, and this is something slightly different that we need to look at as well.
Yep. Okay, Malcolm, you were about to say something.
Yes, I was just to say, from the comments made by various people about chopping down trees and doing something before the developers even get there, those are all valid points. Tree strategy is just too broad a brush, covers too many things, and yet the points being raised here seem to be more about tree protection, whether it's existing stock that we're looking after, it's in the right place, and also protecting it against being chopped down early. So it's more, what can we do about protecting our assets rather than just planting new ones? So yeah. I thought tree protection might be a bit.
Yes, I think you're right, Malcolm. Thank you. I've got Paul and then Andrew again.
Thank you. The proposal I was going to put forward actually links in with developments, but it's specific, and I don't want this to happen again, hence why I think it needs to be looked at very carefully. Bearwood Park in Sindlesham was subject to a development by Reading Football Club and received permission on the 1st of April 2015. It's in an area which is a Grade 2 listed historic park and garden, and there were various conditions attached to the planning permission, including the protection of trees, shrubs, etc. And a large area was also included in a tree preservation order. There's a Category A dam within the development site, but this was only mentioned once in the report that went to Planning Committee on the 1st of April 2015. In December 2020, the developer submitted another application to carry out work within the tree preservation order area. And at the end of January, early February this year, around 450 semi-mature, mature and veteran trees were felled, and some of those are up to 300 years old. The whole process from the original application to the destruction of approximately 450 trees requires scrutiny, and I suggest the Overview Scrutiny C&C Committee.
So in a sense, that's linked to what Malcolm was saying, that what we're really looking about is tree protection, and that is separate from the tree strategy.
I think the tree strategy is one thing. This is something entirely different. This is about tree protection. This is about tree protection on developments, because this was a particular development. But the tree strategy is a separate item, as I see it.
The way the conversation is going, it does seem to me that we are talking about two different things here, so we will take them through as separate things. So, Andrew, your hand is up. You say something, and then we'll try and make a
well, I think, Chair, that you've just made the point that I was going to make.
Right.
You know, the Bearwood case that Paul has just alluded to, it is an extreme case, shocking, absolutely shocking. You know, but similar sorts of things are happening, albeit on a much smaller scale, on a daily basis, you know, throughout the borough. And that's why I would very much like some mechanism to be decided that would enable tree protection, you know, to be properly scrutinised. Now, Andy suggested the possibility, and indeed I think you did also, Chair, raise the possibility of a task and finish group, you know, possibly to look at this with a very specific remit and a very limited time frame, maybe 3-4 meetings, you know, as little as that. But I think a lot could be achieved, you know, with such a task and finish group, and it's such an important and emotive issue, you know, for our residents.
Okay, well, in order to make some progress, let's first of all look at this second issue that's arisen, whether we should scrutinise tree protection. And if people are happy to do that, then we'll have a separate vote on whether it's done by the full committee or whether it's through a task and finish group. So let's have a vote on whether we scrutinise the whole issue of tree protection, particularly with regard to developers Those in favour of doing that? Well, that looks unanimous to me. Thank you very much. The next question is, how do we do it? Do we want to do it as a whole committee, or do we want a very small task and finish group? Before we vote on that, Neil, can I ask you, do we have the resources for yet another task and finish group?
Well, Chairman, the climate emergency group will be submitting their report in June. So after that, we won't have anything running. So we could take it on if it's brief and focused, as you've discussed.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, let me use that as a proposal then, that we set up a task and finish group to look at this. And if you think it should come to the whole scrutiny committee, then vote against that and we'll vote on the scrutiny committee. So hands up if you'd like a task and finish group. Right, that seems to be unanimous then. Thank you very much indeed. So, Neil, if we can put that down as a separate item. And Paul, does that cover what you wanted to raise anyway about trees?
It does about trees, Pauline, but it's also the case of the dam itself, which was not mentioned in the original planning application, or mentioned only once. That's why I want the whole of that to be taken. Now, that can be taken as part of that task and finish group looking at protection of trees, but it must include all of that planning applications that came through for that development. So as a whole.
Perhaps you'd like to be one of the members of the task and finish group.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, we'll
can I
another
sorry. Can I suggest we don't actually choose
to what Sarah was originally talking about then? Go on.
I just wanted to say, I don't think we should actually be choosing members of the task and finish group at the moment, because we will be going into a new municipal year and we might have a different set of councillors on this. So I think the makeup of that task and finish group should wait until after the elections.
Yeah, that's true, because we normally, but anyway, we're talking about next year's forward programme, aren't we, before, after the elections?
Yes, we are.
But I'm all in favour of opening up task and finish groups to the whole council, not just to this committee, because people have different interests. Okay then, Sarah, let's come back to what you were talking about, the tree strategy.
Yeah.
Elaborate a little bit more about that, can you?
Well,
I've forgotten what you said.
A tree strategy has been written.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, this includes the management of our existing trees, having maintenance plans in place, ensuring retention, and also careful planting of others to increase our tree cover. It should be incorporating a whole lot of stuff. I don't know, I've not seen what the plans are so far, but this is going to be very important to the tree cover, our biodiversity, how we look after it all, and it's happening. It should be coming through scrutiny.
So is it really to scrutinise the impact of that strategy?
The development and impact of the strategy.
Okay, well, let's have a vote on that then. Those who would like to see us scrutinise the impact, the development and impact of the tree strategy.
Madam Chairman, it's Emma here.
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt when you're voting. I just feel that putting this through scrutiny we're not going to solve that problem. This is my personal feeling.
Right.
It's got to go through the right departments first for scrutiny, then to take it back and say, well, this is what they're proposing. What do you think? I might be looking at this in the wrong way. I mean, Jim and Andy seem to have a lot of this on the ball with this, but it's just my personal thinking. I agree with what Sarah's saying, don't get me wrong. I think she's absolutely right, especially in the world we're living in. But I think if scrutiny start taking this on, what can scrutiny do? You can't.
Premature, you're saying?
Yeah, it's a bit premature. I think what you need to do is wait and see what comes back in from the environment, and then scrutinise what they say. And if they say, "Well, we're going to allow everybody to just take trees down," then you've got something to stand on and say, "No, we're not allowing this to happen."
Right. Okay. We are actually in the middle of a vote, so I've got some hands up. It's a bit unorthodox, but go on, Andy, and I'll keep those hands up. Go on.
You're on mute.
Muted.
I know. I was just testing to see if anybody was listening. I'm glad you all were. So, yeah, I think if the borough is going to come up with things which are called strategies and they haven't yet done them, that should be a big flag to us. We need to get involved. So I think we should definitely be involved in looking at the development of the strategy. We don't want it to be given to us as a fait accompli 2 weeks before the executive approves it. We need to be in right at the beginning to make sure it's fit for purpose. I'm not sure about the implementation. You know, if we're looking at a tree strategy, it's going to take, you know, it's not something you can put back in 6 months' time, is it, or a year's time, and see how big your oak tree is. You know, I would be much happier just to look at the implementation and make sure it does cover everything that we want it to cover.
Now, so are there any others who want to put their hand up in favour? Right, okay, all those hands down then. Right, those who are against taking it through at the moment. Thank you. Well, that does actually fall, Sarah. But I think it's not that we're against the idea. I think it's more that we think it's a little bit premature. And so keep it in mind, and we'll perhaps come back.
It'll be too late. It's been done right now. If we don't do it this municipal year, it will go through and it'll be too late. So, I mean, you voted against it. That's fine. I can't change that, but it is too late if we don't do it now.
Right. Point taken. Right. Now we're going to move to the different committees. This shouldn't take us very long, actually. Lost my agenda again. Here we are. First of all, the things that are coming up under the C&C committee. Unfortunately, the guy isn't here, but I did ask him if there was anything on there that he objected to, and I didn't have any response to that. So I'm just going to ask you, is there anything on this list that you don't think that C&C should look at? Neil?
Can I just say, Chairman, the first four, 21, 22, 23 and 24, I think they're more like local individual complaints about existing situations rather than broader scrutiny issues. So they may be more suitable.
Which ones are those?
21, 22, 23 and 24. I think they're more individual complaints rather than broader scrutiny issues. So they may be more suitable for referring to the relevant service for an investigation rather than members taking it on.
Complaints procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take that point. So we cross those off. Paul.
Yeah. What Neil's just said is exactly what I was going to say. Actually, they appear to be fairly localised issues. Although the first one, number 21, I'm not sure if that is Wokingham wide or Wokingham borough wide. Is it off-street or on-street parking? It's not very clear what it really means.
I assume it's a town.
But, well, not necessarily. Some people call Wokingham borough or Wokingham the whole of the area. Right. But certainly 22, 23 and 24 appear to be potentially localised, which I think should be referred to the service.
Right, Andy?
I was just going to say, I think the parking ones are hyper localised, very, very localised And as both Neil and Paul have said, and I think the Woking one is a reference to part of Woking town. I don't even think it's the whole town. 24 is interesting, although I suspect this has come out of perhaps issues in a particular area. There might be something there about the way that the borough deals with antisocial behaviour, and I know we have an antisocial or community safety team which does a lot of work with antisocial behaviour, and in conjunction with the police. I'm not on CNC, so I'm not sure what they've done recently, but I think there might be something there about how good is our community safety work, and is it satisfying residents? I know they do a lot of work, and they're up to here with work with problem families, if you like, and in problem areas. But I'm not sure if the amount of work they do is acknowledged or understood by the community at large. But in terms of one particular issue, I don't think so. But I think there might be a broader thing if the committee wants to look at broader.
There's a heck of a lot of work that goes on against antisocial behaviour, but it's partly.
If I could just help with that one.
Yes, Neil.
Community and corporate get an annual update on the community safety strategy, so we could ask for them to pay particular attention to that issue when they come to the committee.
That sounds a good idea. Thank you. Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to echo what Andy was just saying there. I think there is a wider issue there. Having dealt with a couple of these issues and dealt with the team, I know they are frustrated with how the process works and how they get to solving the issues of antisocial behaviour. So I think there is a scrutiny element there, because I think we could actually improve that service. Okay, well, what I'm going to suggest is that we leave off 21, 22 and 23 anyway, because they're not necessarily to do with us, and that we have a separate vote on whether we ask the committee to do something on antisocial behaviour. Neil, any comment on that?
Well, Community and Corporate does get an annual report, so it will come to them during the year. So we can just ask Callum to make sure that that's included as part of that report.
Super. That sounds fine. Andy, your hand's still up. Thank you.
Apologies.
Right, well, given that what Neil's just said does happen, and he'll check that antisocial behaviour is part of that, can we vote en bloc for the rest, for 25 right the way down to 40? And if nobody seems to raise any objections to any of the others, so can I see those in favour of sending all of those to C&C?
Can I just clarify, sorry, Chair, it's actually to 34, because 35 to 40 is children's services.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, including parking on corners? One of them is vehicles parking on blind spots, bends and junctions. Is that really a scrutiny item?
Let's just carry on with the vote. I think it's pretty clear to most of us.
Chair, I was going to come in on the same point, number 33. That is something which is a road safety issue and should be picked up with the police and the highways team.
Right, so it's early town councils put it forward. So just pause the voting for a minute. What was behind it then?
Could I perhaps comment on that? Okay, I do agree with what Paul is saying there. I'm wondering whether this might be broadened slightly to look at CPE more generally. Yeah.
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm very sorry, but I understand, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but the obviously following the consultation on pavement parking and all of that, there is going to be potentially new legislation coming in on this, so it could be an opportunity to scrutinise the role of the authority in upholding that legislation and maybe looking at it as a wider piece, perhaps.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are in the middle of a vote, so let's carry on the vote. Anybody else in favour?
Pauline, can I have just a point of order?
Yes.
32 looks like it belongs to HOSC, not CNC. It's COVID outcomes and missed and canceled appointments. That goes to HOSC.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll give them that. I'm now counting the hands. Well, that's 10 in favour. Can I see those against then? You put your hands down.
I'm voting against because I think we've had to rush this section and we've not been able to give proper consideration to the item.
So it's 10 in favour and 2 against. Oh no, 1 against. There must be some abstentions.
Apologies, Pauline, I didn't put my hand up in time. I meant to vote in favour.
Okay, right. It's passed anyway, so that there's still one missing, but I'd assume that's an abstention. Okay, then that one goes through to C and C. We now come to the Children's Services one, and Alison, you talked about that one last night, didn't you? So I assume that there are no amendments to that the committee agreed it.
The committee didn't have any comments to make.
So, are you happy that they all go forward?
Oh, sorry, actually, no, I think that we felt that perhaps the fostering and adoption was more part of corporate parenting, and that looking at what corporate parenting are doing should be part of Children's Services forward programme. So we would not put that item as an agenda item.
Yeah, give me a few minutes. I'm trying to do this. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Somebody's not on mute.
I have to take out the bloody dog.
Sorry, I'm not quite clear what you're saying. Sorry, one at a time. I'm not quite clear what you're saying, Alison. The fostering and adoption recruitment.
So rather than we wouldn't put that onto our forward programme as an individual item, it was suggested that we should be having as an agenda item and not just once in the year, having oversight and scrutiny of what corporate parenting board are doing.
Ah, right, okay. With that comment, then, are you happy that it goes forward as it is, Andy?
Thank you. I think Alison knows what I'm going to raise. It's the issue we discussed last night, Alison, about this the monitoring of hate and racism in particular in our schools and the difficulty we seem to have in doing that properly. I would hate that to fall off our official agendas. I appreciate that Carol wants to take this offline, but I don't necessarily want it to go offline all the time. I think we need it mentioned, so I think we need to keep it on our agendas, even if it's further down the list, and we're not expecting officers to run off and do a separate report. I would like it to be included somewhere.
Alison?
Absolutely. The reason it was on the agenda was Andy had worked on it together. I had meetings with Sal, and I thought I had expressed that we were very much wanting to understand more about challenging racism and the need to be monitoring racism to be able to see the success of challenging it. It's not a one-off thing that we looked at last night. It's something very important to all of our residents. And essential for all of our children. So yeah, that's definitely needs to be on the forward programme.
Okay, then, in which case we agree the Children's Services list. And what about the HOSC one? Ken, have you got any comments on that one? Or are you happy with it?
No, happy with all of it. Thank you. Lovely.
That's what I like. A nice brief comment and it all goes ahead. Super. Thank you very much.
Pauline, I would like to, I can take this offline, but understand more from the Lib Dems what exactly it is about resource-based units, why it's to be on the forward programme.
Yeah. Can I leave that up to you to deal with then and take it to your own committee?
I can talk to you, Alison. It was me that suggested it. I'll talk to you offline.
That's
Super.
great. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Cheers.
Right, then let's move to Annex B, which looks lengthy in the agenda, but I think all we would really want to comment on was to see whether there's anything you want to add in, particularly under the section what success will look like. Has anybody got any comments on any of that Annex B? In which case, I'll move straight to the vote to see that you're happy with that. Anyone against?
Sorry, Chair, what are we voting for exactly? Or
Annex B, that we're just accepting Annex B. The key priorities. Really doesn't.
So we're just noting the report.
Yeah, it's just noting it, isn't it? Right, okay then, and then looking at Annex C, our own work programme for next year, given that we've now got these other things in it. Is there any comments anybody wants to make on what's here, given that there are some, that it's a bit expanded from our earlier discussion? Neil?
I'll make a suggestion, Chairman, that I merge tonight's discussion into Annex C and then produce an updated version for each committee, which then goes to their first meeting following tonight's meeting.
That would be very helpful, Neil. Yes, it would clarify things a lot, wouldn't it? Make it less muddled. Thank you very much for that. That's super. Right, just quickly moving down to Children's Services Committee, given that we put some more things in that. Any other comments, Alison?
Just to add that, of course, you have invited, well, whoever's chairing OS management come May, we invited all of the new executive members to come to the first ONS main management meeting and tell us what is their plan for the year. And that might, of course, cause us to slightly skew or add to all of our programmes.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think I said that at the beginning of the meeting. Somewhere I said it anyway, that the exec members will be coming. Oh, I said it last night, didn't I, at your committee meeting, that the exec members will be coming and there will be things added in as the year goes on. Malcolm.
Hand is up unnecessarily. I'd left it up. Sorry.
Okay, and Emma?
Just one thing is when the scrutiny committee is obviously discussing anything to do with children's services and or adult services, would this have to be kept just in the domain of the scrutiny committee and not members of the public? That's something I think needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. Neil, any comment on that? Or was it just a given, really?
Well, each item's considered with that aspect, and if things need to be taken in part 2, then we will make the appropriate resolution at the meetings.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I'm moving to Community and Corporate Overview Scrutiny. Any comments on that one, given that we've added some stuff in and that there will be room to add things further during the year? In which case, let's move to the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Ken, do you have any comments?
No, nothing really to add. No comment at all on those.
Okay, well...
Sorry, Chair, there's an item on this one about scrutinising the council's plans to improve air quality across the borough, which does seem a slight duplication of one of the things that we've just agreed we will look at. So item 9 on the HOSC.
Yeah, I'll just look at that one.
Right. Have you got a comment on that?
I think that might be wise to leave that with what we've agreed earlier. I don't think HOSC needs to see that one in particular. It may not even be something that we could reasonably call in on. Depending what you find in your first meeting, though, it could be necessary for us to call in outside parties to clarify. things that have been found out in that first meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Super. I've got hands up from Andrew and Sarah. Is there something quick, please?
Yes. Could I ask, Ken, does a HOSC scrutinise provision of dental services from time to time? This is something that has been raised by a number of our residents in Early.
Yeah, yes is the answer. We do. We normally respond to the CCJ or G giving us the heads up. I think it goes through them as well as a normal health matter. We have had them in the past, and they were due to come in quite recently to mainly explain the COVID situation, but that has drifted into the long grass a bit now, mainly because the problems were fixed and dealt with before they had a chance to come in and explain. But you can imagine they've been very busy, so I understand why they couldn't at the time.
So you don't think it's necessary to revisit that at some point?
Oh no, it will appear again. I'm sure it will appear again on the HOSC. In fact, Neil might be able to give us a better guideline to how often these things come up. But we could actually ask for it as well. We could say we still want to speak to CCG about dental health.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Sarah?
Yeah, it was just to pick up on the air pollution thing. If memory serves me right, this was actually going to be, I believe, a joint item between our committee and HOSC, because obviously there's the health impacts of air pollution, which was the HOSC aspect of it. And that was going to sit alongside what we do as management and look at actually how we tackle it more strategically. So, I mean, obviously, I don't want to presume to tell HOSC what to do or anything, but just as a thought, it could be a joint thing that we do across both committees.
Yeah, we have done that before. And lastly, Jim.
Just very quickly, Chair, on the dentistry, it's been an item that's been carried forward for a couple of months now, where we've invited and they haven't managed to get there, so it won't be let go. It will continue being carried forward.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, then let's move back now to the recommendation on page 13. Requested to consider the request. We've done that. Consider any other potential items, which we've done. Consider any items to be carried forward, which we've done. And to note that additional items can be included in the programmes during the year, and to confirm that each O&S committee will undertake one or more detailed scrutiny reviews. Is there anybody against that as a recommendation? In which case, we happily pass that. Thank you so much for all of your comments there, and that was a major piece of the agenda, and it was really the main agenda item this evening. Right, let's turn now then to item 88 on member training, and we've had an offer from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny to do some training with members. We have had 4 suggestions which are down in this report, and really what I want to do is to find out whether you're happy with the idea of this training, and if so, which ones we will go for, and then who should be involved in it. The cost for an online training session is £650 plus VAT for each session, and that includes as many members as we want to put on it. And I've been assured by Neil that the money is there for us to do it. So can we sort of go through them one at a time? And the first one I've lost is well, it's for June the 15th, isn't it? Which is a date that we've got anyway. So I've got a couple of hands up. Sarah, Andrew, Rachel and Paul. Sarah first.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments more generally about it. I mean, on the first one, it does say in the recommendation about the training being held on Tuesday, 15th of June. I just wonder if we should just specify that that's the evening to make sure it's as accessible as possible to all elected members. And just a thought about putting that in the recommendation. I also wanted to ensure that all the training is available to all councillors, so that
was what I was going to come to. Let's
okay.
just agree the training first, and then see who's going to get involved in it. So, looking at the first one, the scrutiny essentials, the role of scrutiny, which is for the 15th of June. We've got the 15th of June down as a training day anyway. So, any more comments on that one, Andrew?
Can I just
go on, Sarah?
There was one point I wanted to make, and I don't know if it fits into this first training or the next training, which is on the chairing, and I don't know which it's best placed, but we do seem to be having a bit of an issue where we're requesting items and then they're being pulled at the last minute by officers, and then we're not seeing items until it's too late. And I wonder if this is something that should be covered off in training as to how to actually deal with that officer time versus officer accountability issue, and it should be part of one of the training bits. And I don't know if that should be the first training one that we're talking about or the next one. I don't know if Neil's got any advice on that, but I think it's an issue that we have that we do need some training on.
Well, we could include that in, because I think we can ask them to cover things that we want to be covered. We could include that in the essentials one, the first one, which is really the major one. Andrew,
yeah.
Andrew, you...
Well, I was wondering if Neil could just come in on that point.
Andrew?
Yeah, it's a comment that applies to all four of the proposed workshops, and I'd like to request consideration be given to including equalities and cross-cultural, intercultural issues as a cross-cutting theme in all four of the proposed sessions. I think this fits in really, really well. It's so important, and I think it would, fit in really well with some of the work that we're trying to do as a council in the areas of equality and fighting racism and so forth. So I would like to specifically, request equalities and cross-cultural, intercultural issues as a cross-cutting theme across all of these sessions, please.
Neil, any comment on that? Can we do that?
My general comment, Chairman, is that the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny will tailor this training to exactly what we want them to do. So they're very flexible and they're very happy. And just a general point, in terms of the 4 sessions put down there, as I said in the report, they're indicative. So if members wanted to change that, take some out, put some more in, it's entirely up to members. There is some more budget available. So this is, I think, a good chance to focus on training issues that members think are relevant.
Yep, super. So what Andrew's just said, it cuts across all of them, doesn't it? Rochelle.
I'm going to suggest, because of the resources of the council, that everything be delivered online, and also because we don't know if what's going to happen in June at this point, and when we're going to be allowed to do it. It would save us money, and it would be better for everybody because they can work from home on it.
Exactly. We may get more people.
Are you there, Pauline?
Yeah.
All right, you froze for a second. Yeah, I agree with what Rochelle's just said. I think it should be done online. A, saves us money, and I think it will be more accessible for people as well. But we're going to have new members coming along in May, and I think budget scrutiny should be included. Are you there?
I think Pauline's frozen.
It is Pauline, it's not me, is it?
No, I think that's a great idea, Paul.
Okay, let's step in then, since I'm the vice chair.
Thank you, Alison. Did you get that?
I think budget scrutiny has always been an incredibly important job for councillors, and it's great that that's been recognised far more now. And it is something very, very complex that not all councillors, well, I doubt any councillor has understanding of how council functions until they start looking into it. Do we need to vote on that being a separate area of training that we want to offer? In which case, would you like to raise your hand if you would like budget training to be something offered as an additional separate training event? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 8. Okay, so I can see 8 hands up at the moment. Would you like to raise?
Mine keeps going on and off.
Oh.
Malcolm's went up then.
Oh, my apologies. My wife, I just completely went down then. It's now got me back in again. So
okay, so I jumped in, Pauline, and we were just voting on whether we wanted to add budget scrutiny as a separate training event.
Super. You carry on and finish this.
I believe we had eight. Well, hopefully Neil was counting. I believe we had 8 hands up in favour of that.
Right. You can add mine to that.
Is anybody against having budget scrutiny as a separate training offered to all members?
Yeah. So we're going to add the budget, are we?
I think so. I think I remember from the briefing that Neil said that we have been given additional funding for training next year.
Super.
I mean, certainly I hope Neil will keep us within budget. I don't believe that would break the amount what we're allocated. Paul, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. Could we also just include these will be online as well, please?
Yeah. Okay, so people are happy with those 4. Thank you, Alison. I'm really grateful. I've got terrible Wi-Fi connection where I live. So we're happy to include those 4 plus 1 on budget. And what I was going to say earlier was, do we open all of these to all members of the council? Any views on that? Because people might well be on scrutiny at some later date. Any views on that, Andrew?
Yes, I think for the reason that you just said, that any member, may join an overview and scrutiny committee at any time, is a good reason, for opening this up to everybody. And I think it will be interesting for a lot of the members. It will help them understand, the running of the council better, and put them in a better position to answer questions, from our residents and so forth. So I would very much be in favour, particularly, since it's online, of opening it up to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Jim?
Short and sweet, yes. Good idea.
Okay, Rochelle?
Yes, again, I think it's a great idea, because the budget especially, because coming in as a new council, you have no clue what the budget is or how it works or anything like this, and it is necessary. And most of the rest of them are useful because people can attend the committee meetings and understand them better.
Sure.
They don't have to be on the committee to attend.
Good point. Alison?
I think while training's online, which means it's a set fee, however many people attend, we should just be encouraging every single member to attend. And even if you're not going to join a scrutiny committee to look at the budget, I think everyone within their own groups does a lot of work looking at budgets and trying to understand it. So it's going to be helpful, and the value we add to every councillor is only of benefit to our residents.
That's a very nice phrase, Alison. Well put. Yeah. And Jim?
Sorry, Chair, I left my hand up.
Ah, okay. So, back to the just one other question I was going to ask. Should we make this training compulsory particularly for scrutiny members, or is that a step too far? Sarah?
Sorry, my understanding is that you can't legally make it compulsory. You can only
not legally.
No, so you can't, because we're not hired or fired. If a councillor chooses not to do something like this, there's no recourse. So you can strongly advise, but I don't believe you can actually make it compulsory, unless maybe, Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there's some change in the constitution that states that.
The planning committee and I think the licensing committee make their training compulsory.
I think they have to legally. I think that's a condition of the law. Yeah. I don't believe it's a legal requirement. Whether we could change that in the constitution or not, I don't know. But
okay, Alison.
Highly recommended.
Alison.
Yeah, I think we could possibly go to group leaders and ask them that if group constitutions could have a condition that members shouldn't be on O&S scrutiny committees unless they've attended training.
Yeah, that's a good compromise. Neil, could we note that we ask the group leaders to not put anybody on that is not willing to do the training? Is that possible?
It's possible, yes, certainly. But there are also other materials which come along with the training, so we can certainly make sure that all members get the slides, presentations, and other stuff, which helps.
Yeah. Okay. So moving to the recommendation. We consider the provision of the training, consider the indicative training and development programme provided by the centre, consider and approve any amendments, which we've done, we've added one in, and agree that the induction and refresher training session is held on 15th of June. Might we just reword that, because it implies that it's just for new members, so just call it what's it call it here? The Scrutiny Essentials training takes place on the 15th of June and includes induction. Could we amend the words to that, Neil?
Yes, can do.
Yep, okay, because just induction refresher training sounds a little bit exclusive. Is anybody against that recommendation? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Neil, for organising this. It sounds to me to be a super programme. That's smashing. So, moving then to item 19, consideration of the current forward programmes. Any comments on any of them? Given that we are going to have the executive members to the first meeting of every one of these committees to show us what's in their mind. Okay, in which case we'll note that and move to the action tracker report, agenda item 90. Can I just say I've still not had the meeting set up with the executive and CLT. Any news on that, Neil?
I will chase them tomorrow, Chairman.
You've been chasing them for a long time.
They're very elusive, as you know.
Okay, lovely. Thanks. Right, if there's no comments on that particular item, then that finishes everything that's on that agenda. But I'd just like to say that as this is the last meeting of the municipal year, I would sincerely, really sincerely like to thank all of you, all the members of this committee and the other scrutiny committees, for your hard work and your commitment and your cooperation too, because we have tried to be critical friends, and I think that we've done that this year, and we have done our best to make sure that the council is doing its best for the residents. So thank you very much for all of your contributions. And finally, a special thank you to Neil for all his work and his unstinting support of us. Thank you very much, Neil. And I now close the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you for everybody. Thank you, everybody.
For being an
Bye-bye,
excellent
everybody.
chairperson.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Pauline.
Good night.
Thank you. See you on the other side of the election.